Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We now know who will be in the runoff to be the next president of France on May the 7th. The whole world watching Sunday night's results, where the centrist independent candidate Emmanuel Macron and the far-right's Marine Le Pen knocked out the traditional center-left and center-right blocs from that runoff. With us to talk about it, Paris Municipal Councillor Anne Le Breton, who is a backer of Emmanuel Macron. Michael Salah, who heads the National Front for the Northwestern Parisian suburban département of Val d'Oise, and he is a supporter of Marine Le Pen. Sudhir Hazarising, the author of How the French Think, and Famke Krummüller, of Political Strategists, Open Cities. Welcome back to all of you. The map of France, of who voted what, really highlights the divisions that we were talking about a little bit in part one. This is a nation of 67 million. Anne Le Breton mentioning how Paris voted for Macron. There you see from the first round the areas where Le Pen was in the majority: the north, the east, and the Riviera and the whole Mediterranean coastline, whereas Macron took Brittany, the southwest, the Rhône-Alpes area, and we saw again the Paris area, which has the most votes, 1 in 6. There it was Macron. Sudhir, if we look at this map, what does it tell you about France? Well,
you know, there's always a kind of expression consacrée, as they say, which is that France is cut in half, coupé en deux. And you see it, I mean, you see the line there between Eastern and Western France, basically. Western France being more National Front, Eastern being more Macron. But I think there are multiple divisions, because it's also a town-country division. Towns have voted overwhelmingly for Macron. The countryside has voted for Marine Le Pen. There's also a kind of optimistic and pessimistic distinction. The optimistic France, wherever you happen to live, the France that believes in the future and it doesn't feel threatened by Europe or globalisation, has massively voted for Emmanuel Macron. And the France that is anxious about the future, the pessimistic France, has voted overwhelmingly for Marine Le Pen.
That's the division as it's spelled out. Has that division changed much over the past 5 years? The reason everybody's watching this election is because of what happened in the UK with Brexit, the US elections.
Well, what's happened is that the National Front has kind of largely consolidated the gains it has been making over the last 5-6 years. I mean, to be very accurate, although the National Front in this election has won more votes than it ever has in any previous presidential election, so it is on a kind of remarkable high from that point.
Thank you very much.
It is also disappointing. Don't thank me too quickly, because it's also, I think, a disappointment, because early on in the campaign, polls were putting Marine Le Pen's vote on 27, 28%, and she's ended up much lower.
You know, considering the fact that we had to face all the coalesced political parties and all the media, it's a great show that we put on.
It's not really what you expected, though.
So. Well, you know, it's good to be the underdog because you try harder.
And Le Breton, how do you bridge that divide, though, between the two Frances?
I think what we're seeing here also, I really agree with you, between the optimistic and the pessimist France. And the Front National and other parties have been breeding on fear, on hatred for a long time. And I think what we might be seeing
terror.
Here,
this is where
I didn't interrupt you and you interrupt me a lot. What we might be seeing here is the decision of France to change brackets and to look into a more optimistic future. And that we'll see in 2 weeks.
Okay, but
that might be a turning point of refusing to give in to fear, to give in to hatred, and just being tired, because it's been, this kind of general talk about immigration, about decline, has been going on for a lot. Of course, there's a lot of unemployment.
400,000 under Emmanuel Macron's rule at the Ministry of Economy.
Emmanuel Macron has never been president of France.
He was Minister of Economy. Can't you act when you're Minister of Economy? You can't do anything when you're Minister of Economy in France? Well, I don't believe that. I think that when you're Minister, you're in charge. You're in charge of the economy, and 400,000 extra unemployed, to me, is outrageous.
Yeah, there's the unemployment rate, which remains chronically high. There's wages, which have not gone up much. There's growth, which is anemic. But
there are other things that are very, we are a beautiful country, and when we compare ourselves to the rest of the world, French people do realize that not everything is bleak and dark.
Well,
and so I think, excuse me, can I finish a sentence, please? Because otherwise I'm just going to have to leave.
Visit the country.
One at a time. Anne Breton.
So I think there's a real something new starting in the country, and it's not only in France. It started already in Holland. People have been very scared by Donald Trump getting into power in the States, and I think this election, starting with Holland and then us, is maybe, it looks like it's the coming in of the populists, but it might be their swan song. And I think it's going to be the beginning of a decline of the populist regime and people taking their future in their hands again. We have managed to get a lot of young people who were never interested in politics with us. The young have never participated so much in politics. I have to give you that credit that you had managed to get the young interested in your politics.
But
now the other ones who were not, the others who were not interested have really, taken power. And you might be very surprised by the result in 2 weeks.
Has the National Front hit a glass ceiling, Famke?
As I mentioned before, I think the National Front is definitely hitting a glass ceiling because of the limited amount of votes that they can get from voters that have not voted them in the first round. It has a traditional glass ceiling of, for example, the older electorate who's very afraid of the consequences, for example, of leaving the euro, impact on their pensions, etc., who really refuses to vote National Front, for example. So it is really hitting a glass ceiling on several levels. And that's something that will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to break.
Michael Salah, in the final week of the campaign, we saw Marine Le Pen take a much more hard-line discourse, harking back to the National Front of old, talking about foreigners as intruders. Why did she decide to do that? Why did she suddenly, in the last week, she had played the more social welfare card, and that appeals to National Front voters in the north. Here, it's more the hard-line tack that voters, especially in the southeast, like.
Because she's in tune with what the French people suffer from, and when you look at when you do the math regarding the runoff,
it shores up her base. But does it scare away voters?
No. Let me do the math with you, if you don't mind. If you look at the 20% that voted for François Fillon, we're saying that half of those people are patriots and have a problem with the mass immigration, that's the policy of mass immigration that's been put into place by Mr. Hollande and Mr. Macron. A good part of
what mass immigration? There hasn't been mass immigration.
200,000 people coming into this country legally each year, and almost the same number illegally. Emmanuel Macron went on a job interview to Mrs. Merkel and congratulated her for greeting 1.5 million migrants into Germany who can come to France the next day because there are no borders anymore. And the French aspire that we restore borders to our country to make sure that we can protect ourselves from this and the terror that it's created, and also the unemployment. And to finish with doing the math about the second turn. So I'm saying that probably half of Fillon's voters will come to us, and probably a good chunk of Mélenchon's voters will come to us because they've had to suffer from the fierce globalisation that Mr. Macron is the promoter of. And the French are sick and tired of that, and this is why we're here. Macron will lose this election.
Just to be sure, that's not what the polls show, right? The polls don't show that half of Fillon's voters would go to Marine Le Pen, and they show that, for example, half of Mélenchon's voters just won't go out and vote, which will help Marine Le Pen, but it's not a vote in favor.
Sure. Well, we were given at 36% yesterday. We're at 38 today. You know, at this rate, we will win by a big margin. It's not going to be a narrow win.
I love your wishful thinking. No, I disagree also with what you say about immigration. You think that's what the French people want. but you know, of course, your results in the elections show differently.
And you need to go out of Paris. I mean, come on.
I do
the
go
4th
out of
district
Paris.
is not life.
I go out of the 4th district. Don't worry, I go out a lot, and I was vice president of the national.
You know what? I invite you to Val d'Oise, and we'll take a tour of Cergy, for example. We'll take a tour of Goussainville. I'll take you to a tour. I'll buy you a coffee. Okay?
I have been to those places.
You'll see what it's like.
Stop patronizing me. I have been to those places.
I wouldn't dare patronizing you. I'm just inviting you over for a coffee. Come on.
Yes.
You'll see what it's like.
All right.
So what? No, we don't. You don't. You're not defending patriotism. You're defending. Oh, that's the thing. He just talks all the time, and then I lose the thread of my thought.
Well,
you're very
sorry, I will shut up. Promise.
It's okay. Yes.
Well, I mean, I think one of the issues which will come up in the debate that the two candidates will have is this distinction between patriotism and nationalism.
Thank you very much.
Marine Le Pen is a nationalist, and she has a view of nationalism which is very different from Emmanuel Macron.
On which criteria do you base this?
Macron's view, I'll explain it.
Oh, sure.
Let me finish.
Thanks.
Macron's view is grounded in what you might call the French revolutionary republican tradition. And that is that your citizenship is based not on ethnicity or race or religion, but it's based on adhesion to a number of civic values. That's his idea of what it means to be French. What the National Front and Marine Le Pen defend is a slightly more ethnic view.
I need to answer that.
And it's that ethnic tradition which also explains why the National Front talks a lot about immigration, talks about "On est chez nous." You know, when you go to a National Front meeting, you hear that chant. Sure. And that's a kind of very clear tacit signal about a certain idea of Frenchness. So I think a nationalist view, which is a kind of closed view, and
it's not true at all.
Republican
this is propaganda.
view.
One at a time.
Well, please allow me to finish. You'll have a time to respond.
Okay.
And
I want to respond to
a Republican view, which is a view which is much more consistent with the kind of historical tradition of France. I think that's what will come out very clearly in the debate.
And Le Breton, this issue of who's the patriot and who's the nationalist, is it really the essential question?
No, it's one of the questions, and we absolutely, we see ourselves as patriots, and we absolutely want to put that forward. What they're offering is nationalism. It's completely different. It's looking to the past. It's not looking to the future. It's closing borders. And it's a whole...
No, it's having borders.
And what you were saying about immigration, I'm sorry. 200,000 immigrants in France, a third of them are foreign students who are passing by, like, you know, American students on their junior year abroad count in those figures, or people who've married foreign spouses, like a lot of French people. And I can tell you...
Regroupement familial is a big,
I'm not only talking about regroupement familial. I'm just talking about anybody who marries a foreign spouse, like François Fillon, who has an English wife, like a lot of people who have foreign spouse, because we live in a large world now. So I want you to go and tell French people that they will not be able to marry foreign spouse and bring them into the country. It's going to be a lot of people haven't understood that that's a third of the immigration. So one of the problems with you is you lie about your figures and you lie about what you're going to be able to do about it. Because what are you going to do? You're going to go and get people who are, you know, you can't even get the policemen to stop illegal aliens. You know what we're going to do? We're going to do exactly what 99% of the countries in the world do. Restore borders and just control whoever comes in and whoever does not come in. Just borders, you know. 99% of the countries in the world have borders and have a currency. So no more tourism, no more foreign students.
What I would like
and what do you do with the people who already live here? What do you do with the people who already are in France?
Emmanuel
Macron, put them in boats, you send them
patriotism in investment banking. That is one thing that is for sure. France doesn't mean anything to him. And the fact that such a guy could become the president of France to us is a nightmare.
All right, the clock is running short. Let me just I would
like to answer just what you said on nationalism, because nothing is less remote from Marine Le Pen's conception of what it means to be French. Marine Le Pen says the key element to France is its ability to assimilate newcomers. And she said a zillion times that wherever you come from, whatever your background is, cultural, religious, whatever, what makes France shine on the world, like you said, in philosophical terms, is that it greets you as one of its people as long as you adhere to core values. That's what she says. This is what being French and patriotic is about. There's nothing ethnical or nothing religious about it.
How come all second-generation French people are so afraid you might win?
We are a secular country. And that is it's a keystone of our ethos. And Emmanuel Macron wants to break with that secularism. For example, he wants to allow burkini on beaches. I'm sorry, we are the land of Brigitte Bardot, where women.
Where have you seen this in his platform?
He said, I have no problem with that.
Yes,
you know what? In my département, he's got one representative who's a radical Islamist who said ties with radical Islam, and he said, well, he's an okay guy. Well, sorry, it's not okay with us.
That is not his political platform. At least I didn't read
it.
It
is in the platform. He says, I don't have a problem with burkini.
The question now is convincing the other voters. On the right, François Fillon was first to come out shortly after 8 p.m. and recognize the result and call for a vote for Macron against Le Pen. The socialist candidate was quick to follow.
Even though he is not part of the left, and it is not his mission to represent it, I make a clear and total distinction between a political adversary and an enemy of the Republic.
That was Benoît Hamon, but the far left's Jean-Luc Mélenchon refused to endorse Macron at the outset. He's instead asking his rank and file to vote over the web. And on Sunday evening, he clearly sounded like someone who will vote with his feet on May the 7th.
The media and the oligarchy are jubilant. For them, nothing is so beautiful as a final round between two candidates who both support the status quo and who show no concern for the environment or for the peril facing human civilization.
Seen making the round this Monday the hashtag Without Me May 7th, sans moi le 7 mai. Famke, he garnered nearly 20% of the vote, Jean-Luc Mélenchon. What's your calculus if Mélenchon voters stay away on May the 7th? How does that change the equation?
So current polls show that about 1/3, maybe a little bit more of his voters want to abstain. What is interesting is that polls, they were wrong on one thing ahead of this election, which is that they predicted lower participation than what is usual. They started by predicting 60-something, then 70-something, and now it was almost 80, which is normal. And I would argue that given the importance of this election, given the fact that we've got 2 weeks to talk about it, people will understand to a certain extent that it's important to vote, and that if you don't go and vote, you're actually giving your vote to the one that you don't want to elect. So maybe in this circumstance, the abstention won't be as high as we're discussing again.
Sudhir has a reading. The far left candidate there saying he's going to leave it up to the rank and file. There's going to be some kind of vote over the web. What was your reaction when you heard that?
I was a bit surprised because, I mean, in 2012, Mélenchon actually made the fight against the National Front one of the centerpieces of his campaign. And he then subsequently went and stood in the parliamentary election in the north of France. He didn't win, of course. But I think a majority of people who are in La France Insoumise would not want to see Marine Le Pen elected president. Most of them come from
take the minority.
A left-wing background. And I think part of what Mélenchon was doing there was continuing, because he's very good at publicity. He knows that now that he's out of the race, he's not going to be part of the story. So he's now kind of creating an event, which is getting the members of La France Insoumise to vote, and then producing a result, which we all know what it's going to be. It's not going to be support Marine Le Pen. And so that'll also give him some time to
It's not going to be support Marine Le Pen, but it could be don't go vote.
I doubt that. I mean, that is what might happen in... I mean, I think his electorate will break three ways, right? There'll be a cluster that'll vote for Emmanuel Macron. There'll be a cluster that will that will vote Marine Le Pen, and there'll be a cluster that will either abstain or vote blanc.
I agree with that, and same with François Fillon's electorate. I agree with your analysis completely.
But what happened yesterday also, it's going to give him a very hard time to get past what he did there, because a lot of people who were interested in his ideas, who might not have voted for him, but could have voted for him, have really backed off with the fact that he didn't come out immediately and say, like Benoît Hamon and François Fillon, that he would vote for us. So he's you know, I don't know what he's out to gain, but I think he's also lost something.
He's very unpredictable, and I think that was another.
I think he's a bad loser also.
I would still add that to a certain extent, it's also a pure and very simple continuation of his program and what he defends, which is give the voice to the people. So he's giving the voice on this decision to his electorate and his militants. So it's surprising, but limited, I'd say.
So much more to talk about, and yet the clock is running. Famke Krummüller, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well Sudhir Hazarizing. I want to thank as well Anne Le Breton, Michael Salah. Stay with us, though. Our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to Emma James. We're going to say goodbye to Famke because she has to run. But thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, Emma. Reactions. Could you say the dust has settled after this first round?
A little bit, but as you were just talking about that hashtag sans moi le 7 mai, without me, May the 7th. It really does show the strength of feeling out there, because obviously those people whose candidates got through to the second round, they're pretty happy with everything, but there is an awful lot of discontent out there. And we're seeing images like this where it's almost like the choice of red nuclear button, extreme right or investment banker in this particular cartoon. This one too has the choice between the plague or cholera.
Hang on, these are not coming up yet. Maybe we can sort that out.
I promise I'm not just making it up. Yes, a lot of people using that phrase, that is the choice between the plague or cholera, which does seem more than a little exaggerated, shall we say. But it's something that people believe, and it does appear to be something that people are wanting to actually take out onto the streets, as this person talks about. Only taking to the street and mobilisation can protect us to avoid the social decline that's been promised, really. This Twitter user talks about the fact that he won't back down in the face of fascism or bankers, using the word, of course, insoumis, la France insoumise, which is the phrase, the movement, of course, of Jean-Luc Mélenchon. This person saying they wanted a fight between the devil and the candidate of the system. That's what they've got. And certainly Lobs is blaming very much the followers of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, saying that it is les insoumis nini. Nini is someone who is neither one nor the other. And so what they say is that, you know, obviously there's been no endorsement from Jean-Luc Mélenchon, unlike in 2002, when he very quickly came out and said to his supporters they should vote anyone against the National Front. But with Macron predicted to win by 60% points to 40%, there really isn't that much room for error. And Lobs is reporting that many on social media are fighting against this idea, and it'll be interesting to see really how much this takes off, because we are seeing people who are very unimpressed with the whole idea. I haven't seen such a stupid hashtag since Marine 2017, says this person. If you don't get involved on May the 7th, you're letting fascism happen in France. This Twitter user too. I don't think sans moi le 7 mai is a good idea. This is how you end up with crazy political leaders. People have to go vote. I will.
All right, so that's the argument within the left. Politics is about ideas, but it's also about people and their personalities, and do they look presidential?
Absolutely, and it does seem to be something that people have had a bit of a problem with Emmanuel Macron. Certainly looking on social media, lots of people talking about the fact that this person says Macron appears as though he's already won. That doesn't bode well. And it's this kind of image that is doing the rounds, him winking at the podium during his speech, having learnt that he had come top and he was through to the second round. Some people feeling not only is it not presidential, but that it's not appropriate either, because because, of course, we've got 2 weeks more campaigning and another round to go. This person tweeting that it's very annoying, these images of Macron with champagne and a big Parisian brasserie. It's not the night of the second round. And of course, that is a nod, really, as many people have pointed out. He went off to celebrate in a posh restaurant, La Rotonde, and many people saying it smacks of what Nicolas Sarkozy did in 2007 when he went to Le Fouquet, Le Fouquet's restaurant. Why it's Fouquet, I never understood, because surely it should be Fouquet. I've never understood that. But this Twitter user says these were disastrous images. And this is the kind of thing that we've seen of Emmanuel Macron chatting to Jacques Attali, former political advisor to François Hollande, so once again tying him back in very much with the establishment. But if you don't remember the fuss over Le Fouquet, Nicolas Sarkozy, looking very youthful there, back in 2007, on the night that he won the presidential election, took lots of people. That's his previous wife, but he took celebrities with him too, and it was a very glitzy glam affair, which led to him in no short space of time becoming known as President Bling Bling. And that was something that he never managed to shrug off. It'll be interesting to see if Emmanuel Macron could possibly end up suffering the same fate.
All right, how you handle yourself over the next 2 weeks, very important for both candidates. Emma James, I want to thank you. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.